Hello, book lovers and English learners. Welcome to our December live read along. I'm Lydie Bureau. I'm an English teacher in France, and I'm also the founder of Lydie's Book Club, a book club for learners of English. In this book club, I host live readings and workshops on adaptations of classics of literature and contemporary novels in their original text. I also tend to prioritize books that are written by women. Each month, we read and explore a different book for all levels of English. And 3 times a month, I meet the members of the book club in a live workshop session via Zoom to discuss the chapters read over the week. So, this way, members can practice their speaking skills and improve their English this way and their critical thinking skills. This is the real place where we can exchange um, and um, and where you can meet other book lovers and share your views on the novel and the characters, and it's usually a joyful moment, and we never know where the conversation is taking us, and we always learn something new. This month, we are reading the B1 intermediate adaptation of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, our beloved Jane Austen. So this is a 2021 Penguin Readers edition. Uh, if you want to know more about the novel, the original novel, which is this one, and Jane Austen's work, so you can see the big difference between the adaptation for B1 intermediate level in English and the original text. If you want to know more about Jane Austen's work and life, and also about the novel, then I invite you to listen to the podcast episode 28, An Introduction to Jane Austen and Sense Sensibility, which is available on this YouTube channel and also on the Spotify podcast Read in English, which is Lydia's Book Club podcast on Spotify. So throughout 2025, the town of Winchester in Hampshire, where Jane Austen is from, there are going to be organized a lot of different tours and events next year in honor of Jane Austen's 250 years anniversary. So her birth year, because she was born on 1775. So next year will be the 250 years of Jane Austen's birth, and to celebrate this milestone, so the town of Winchester, in collaboration with the museum, Jane Austen's museum, Chawton House, they have organized various events. So you can check out the events and book your tickets on visitwinchester.com. The link is in the description. So have a go, have a look and see if there is something that you would like to do. It sells really fast, so a lot of things are fully booked, so you better get quick. So a lot of these events are in person. So if you happen to live in the UK, or if you're planning on traveling to the UK next year, well, if you're planning on traveling, then UK is probably a great destination if you're a fan of Jane Austen. So today it is our sixth live reading session of Sense and Sensibility. We're going to read chapters 11 and 12. Last week, I hosted the first live workshop to talk about chapters 1 to 4. And this Saturday, on the 20th of December, live on Zoom in the morning at 9 a.m. I will host the second live workshop that will cover chapters 5 to 10. 5 to 10. So all the chapters that we have read last week. So if you want to attend this next workshop, you can still do it, and you can attend by subscribing to the book club on litusbookclub.com. You have also the description in the video below the video. When you are on the subscribing page, you will see all the dates and live readings left, because we will finish the live reading this Thursday. So actually there's just one more live reading, and then we will be finished with the reading of this adaptation. But there are still 2 workshops left. So you can read the book in your own time, but still attend. Even if you haven't read all the chapters, you can still attend the workshop. Don't be shy, and don't worry about having read all the chapters before joining the book club, or participating in the workshop. It's still you're still going to have a great time, and I really don't mind, really. So yes, that's about the workshops. Also, final thing, I am pleased to announce that now you can purchase the 3-part live workshop of The Age of Innocence, which is our November live read along. You don't need to become a member of the book club for that. You can just purchase the workshop. There are pre-recorded sessions that we have done last month. After you subscribe, you sign up for the workshop, then you'll be asked to create a login, and once you've created your login, you have a private access to all the videos of the workshop, and then you can watch the videos at your own time whenever you want. So if you're interested in knowing more about The Age of Innocence and read this adaptation, this is an A2 plus adaptation of the novel, which is the equivalent of pre-intermediate level. So there are about 70 pages. So if you are an intermediate level, this is perfect. It's going to be easy, and you will be it will be quite easy for you to read the book, and watching the video and our conversation on the book will help you to develop further your understanding of English, and also you have an idea of what it's like to be part of the book club and the kind of conversation that we have. So yeah, so you have the link in the description to the live workshop store, which is on my website as well. So if you want to have a look at all the other workshops as well that we've done since last May, you've got a lot of choice of workshops. Right. Now, that being said, let's get started with our session today. So as I usually do, I like to do a quick recap on the last chapters that we read last week. So we read 9 and 10. And in these chapters, let's refresh our minds. Chapter 9, Edward arrives in London, and at this point, the secret engagement between him and Lucy Steele, if you remember well. We've heard, and Elinor heard that, well, she learned from Lucy Steele herself that Edward and her had been engaged for 4 years. And now Mrs. Ferrars, so Edward Ferrars' mother, knows about it, as well as Fanny Dashwood, his sister. They have discovered that he's been engaged to Lucy Steele. And at this point, Lucy Steele was invited. So Fanny learned it from Anne Steele, which who didn't think that she was revealing a secret or she was doing something bad. So Anne revealed that her sister was engaged with her brother, with Edward, and once Fanny heard, once she told her, Fanny just went to the roof. She was not expecting similar. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to get a bit more light from this. Yeah, right. So, Fanny was completely mad, yeah, very upset because her mother and herself as well are expecting that Edward marries someone rich or with status, with rank, someone with a title, so that it elevates everyone's connections and wealth. So, and that preserves their image as well. And obviously, Lucy still doesn't have any money, similarly to Elinor. But for some reason, Fanny liked Lucy still at this point, but she didn't know that she was engaged with her brother. And once she learned it from Lucy Steele's sister, then it was a completely different story, and she did not accept this situation. The Steele's sister were at this point were living. They were invited to stay at Fanny Dashwood's house, and once she learned that, Fanny Dashwood wanted them out of the house, and she threw them. Well, threw she expelled them in a way. So that was actually chapter 10. Yeah, when Mrs. Dashwood, well, Fanny Dashwood asked the Steele's girls to leave the house, and John Dashwood, if you remember, he is completely unhelpful. Yeah, he is just there, but it's Fanny who's running the house, not he is just following orders from Fanny, and he doesn't have much personality. It's just boring, and he's trying to be nice, but unfortunately, he ends up just doing what his wife wants. So, yeah. So this is sorry. This is a bit hot. Okay. So before this, there was this just before uh, all this happened. Um, there was this very comical situation, comic situation, yeah, I would say, where you had so Lucy still was visiting Elinor, and uh, at the same time, Edward Ferrars came to visit Elinor as well. So the three of them, if you remember here on the in the illustration, the three of them were in the same room, and they were all embarrassed and confused. And Elinor stayed calm as she always does and composed. And she left them finding a pretext, I can't remember what she said. She pretended that she wanted to check on her sister or something like that. She found an excuse to leave the room because this was too much. Um, Especially after had asked Fanny to help Lucy, um, and yeah, having the to have the favors of um, Fanny Dashwood. So it was oh sorry. So it was a little bit too much when the two of them um, visited her at in London where she's staying, so at Mrs. Jennings' house. Um, so right. So this happened. Um, and I think it was at that point that he asked her. I can't remember. Anyway, so chapter 10, Lucy's secret is discovered and she is thrown away by Fanny Dashwood. And now um in concerns to Marianne and her story with Willoughby. No, we know that what is completely out of no, there is no story with Willoughby. My apologies. Oh yes, so Miss Morton. Oh yeah. So John also explains to Mrs. Jennings that um, due to the fact that now everyone knows that Lucy Steele and Edward Ferrars were engaged, secretly engaged for 4 years, um, John Dashwood is explaining to Mrs. Jennings that this situation could jeopardize his prospect to marry, well, or the Mrs. Ferrars, so Edward mother's, Edward mother's prospect for her son to marry Miss Morton, who is the sister of Lord Morton, and and this would not look good on Edward because Lord Morton might refuse to give his daughter's hand to a young man that is already engaged, and the prospect of wealth would uh, vanish. So this is terrible. This is a terrible situation at the moment because um, it looks really bad on the whole family that he got engaged secretly with this poor girl who comes from nowhere and has no relations and who's nothing, basically. Um, But in the end, at the very end, Colonel Brandon actually um, suggested that he could. Oh, was he in this chapter? Um, at some point, or was it at the end of chapter? Her husband. Um, Colonel Brandon visited Elinor, and he actually offered um, talked to Ellen. Well, offered Edward Ferrars to be the priest at his estate. This could actually be a solution for Edward to get married with Lucy and live on Colonel Brandon's estate and have a little bit of income and become independent from his mother. But I can't remember whether if it was in this chapter. Hmm. Uh, oh no, that was chapter 10. 9, sorry. So that was chapter 9. Where I spoke to her. I'm so embarrassed. Well, I can't remember. It doesn't seem like it was in this chapter. Well, there was a chapter before. Was full of admiration of the picture. Um, anyway, uh, was probably chapter 9. Anyway, let's not waste more time. And anyway, so he offered, I can't remember which, oh, sorry. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, and let's read chapter 11. Okay, leaving London. Mrs. Jennings went out to visit some people After she left, Elinor sat down to begin her letter to Edward. She worried about what to say and how to say it. Just then, the door opened and Edward walked into the room. He told her that he had met Mrs. Jennings as she was leaving, and she had encouraged him to come upstairs to speak to Elinor. They both looked embarrassed. I have something to tell you, said Elinor. Colonel Brandon was here only 10 minutes ago, and he wants to give you the position of priest in his estate at Delaford. There will be an income of about £200 a year. So that was probably chapter 10. Yeah, and I, for some reason, couldn't find it. Anyway, so here it is. Edward looked very surprised. Elinor continued. Colonel Brandon is very sad to hear about what your family have done, and he wants to help you. Marianne and I are sad too. I'm sure that you tried to help me by asking Colonel Brandon to do this, said Edward. No, replied Elinor. "It was Colonel Brandon. He is a very good man." Edward looked at her for a long time, probably because he expected that it came from her. "I must go and thank Colonel Brandon. He has made me a very happy man," he said, although his face was extremely serious. After he left, Elinor thought to herself sadly, the next time I see him, he will be Lucy's husband. Soon Mrs. Jennings returned. Elinor told her, "Colonel Brandon came here to tell me about the church at Delaford and to say that Edward could have the position of priest there." "Oh," said Mrs. Jennings, "I'm happy to hear there's good news for Edward and Lucy. They will have an income and a home at Delaford." After leaving Mrs. Jennings' house, Edward went to thank Colonel Brandon and then to tell Lucy the news. Soon after this, Mrs. Jennings saw Lucy and found her extremely happy. Elinor decided that although she did not like Fanny, it was her duty to visit her. Fanny had been ill, so it was the right thing to do. It's probably under the shock of learning that Edward has been engaged to Lucy. She can't go over it. Get over it, sorry. However, Marianne said that she would not go. She could not pretend to care about Fanny. When Elinor arrived at the Dashwoods' house, she was told that she could not see Fanny, but John was there. "I am pleased to see you, Elinor," he said. "Is it true that Colonel Brandon wants to give the position of priest on his estate to Edward? Why does he want to help him? I'm so surprised." In John's mind, family duty was the only reason to help anyone. "Yes, indeed." "Yes, it is true," said Elinor. "And Edward will have an income of £200 a year, and they're not even relatives," said John. "Why is the Colonel doing this?" "He wants to help Edward," replied Elinor. "Edward is very lucky, but please do not talk about this to Fanny. I have told her, and she is very upset," said John. So here we can see John's true character and the fact that helping someone is just remains something that is just that belongs to duty to just you can't be nice to someone unless this is because you have to do it. This is your duty to do it. So this is a concept. Kindness and generosity is a completely foreign concept to John. So this is quite funny thing here. Funny passage. Mrs. Ferrars knows nothing. But after the marriage, I suppose she must be told she does not want to see Edward. He has made her suffer so much. She is a very good mother. And now she's thinking that her son Robert should marry Miss Morton, John said. The mother is always very resourceful. Well, she's got two sons, so. "Can't Miss Morton choose whom she marries?" asked Elinor. But John seemed surprised by her question. How would she dare choosing someone? At that moment, Robert Ferrars entered the room, and John left to go and tell Fanny that her brother was there. Elinor was left alone with Robert. Robert said that he had heard about the Colonel's kindness to Edward, and he started to laugh, saying, "I cannot imagine Edward as a priest, and he will have a very small income. Poor Edward." Elinor listened silently with a serious face. "I told Edward not to spend time with that girl, but he did not take my advice." Robert continued. As soon as she could, Elinor found a reason to go. She had to prepare their things, as she and Marianne were going to leave London very soon and travel with Mrs. Jennings to Somerset. Colonel Brandon was also going to join them a few days later. Although Marianne had been unhappy in London, when the time came to leave, she felt only sadness. This was the place where she had had her last hopes of happiness with Willoughby. Elinor felt pleased to be free from seeing Lucy again and grateful that Marianne had not had to see Willoughby again. She hoped that Marianne would feel calmer when she returned to Barton. After a long journey, they arrived at Cleveland, the Palmers' home in Somerset. It was a large house in beautiful countryside. As Marianne entered and looked out across the hills, she knew that Willoughby was there. Not very far away at Combe Magna, his estate, she was full of deepest sadness. During the days that followed, Marianne spent her time walking alone in the countryside, but soon the weather changed and it rained and rained. So remember the beginning of the novel, it is a similar scene where Marianne is walking in the countryside and suddenly it rains and then Willoughby picks her up. So let's see what happens. After that, she found books in the house and spent her time reading. Colonel Brandon reached Somerset a day or two later and came to visit Cleveland. He talked to Elinor about Delaford and what it would be like for Edward there. Elinor noticed that the colonel was always looking at Marianne. He was very worried that she did not seem well after she had gone out walking. She did not seem well after she had gone out walking, while the ground was still very wet. The next morning, Marianne got up and sat by the fire, but she felt very cold. She had pain all over her body, and she felt extremely tired. Colonel Brandon was surprised that Elinor was so calm as she tried to look after her sister and find ways to help her feel better. Mrs. Jennings said that they must call a doctor. One arrived, and after seeing Marianne, he told Elinor and Mrs. Jennings that Marianne had a fever and could die. Marianne spoke in a wild and confused way. "Is Mama coming?" she kept asking. Elinor was extremely worried. And Colonel Brandon decided that he would immediately take his carriage and bring Mrs. Dashwood to Cleveland. Right, this is very confusing, very sad, a tragic moment because we don't know what's going to happen to Marianne. She's very ill. Before he left, he made sure that he gave Elinor clear advice about what time she could expect him to return with Mrs. Dashwood. It would be about 10 o'clock the following night. The next morning, Marianne felt better, and when the doctor came, he told them that the fever had gone. So she probably caught a cold, after walking under the rain. This made Mrs. Jennings and Elinor feel much happier. But all day, like the others before it, Elinor sat beside Marianne's bed, ready to bring her anything that she needed. The evening came with strong winds. Suddenly, Elinor heard the sound of a carriage coming up the road. It was 8 o'clock. She looked at the window and saw the lights of the carriage and 4 horses. She called a servant to sit with Marianne, and she ran downstairs expecting to see her poor mother to see her poor mother worried and upset. As she reached the hall, she could not believe her eyes. When she saw him standing there at the door, it was Willoughby. What? Willoughby the Return. What is he doing here? Especially that now he's a married man. Chapter 12. Willoughby tells Elinor his story. Please, hear my story. Give me 10 minutes of your time, Willoughby cried. Sit down. Willoughby cried. Sit down. Be quick, Elinor replied, not knowing what to do. A servant told me just now that your sister is feeling better, he said. Yes, she replied. I have ridden all day to get here, said Willoughby. I know that you think very badly of me, but will you listen to my story? Elinor nodded silently. When I met your sister, I found her so pretty. I enjoyed being with her so much. Everything about her was lovely. I wanted her to love me. Do not continue, said Elinor, feeling angry. Please, I must tell you everything, said Willoughby. I have never been rich, but I knew that after the death of my cousin, Mrs. Smith, I would have money, although that could be a long time in the future. I could not marry someone without money of her own. I knew this as I began to love Marianne. I allowed myself to spend all my time with her, and never spoke of an engagement, but my feelings grew stronger. I decided to ask her to marry me, but that same day, when I returned to Allenham, I found that Mrs. Smith had heard of something that I had done to a young woman. But you know about this from Colonel Brandon. So Mrs. Smith knew, did not know about Marianne, but she knew about Eliza, the little Eliza. Remember, the girl that Colonel Brandon looked after. She was the daughter of an old friend, well, the former wife of, well, for his former sister-in-law that died soon after the death of her daughter, the little Eliza. So this little Eliza got pregnant with Willoughby. I have heard about how you behaved with this girl. Yes, nothing can change my opinion of your character now, she said. You heard about it from Colonel Brandon, not from me, said Willoughby. That girl, Eliza, had very strong feelings for me. I behaved selfishly. I did not feel so strongly for her. I now have hurt Marianne, whose feelings for me were just as strong, but her mind is far better. She reads books, she understands music. All the time you were with my sister, you did not think about that poor girl. While you were enjoying yourself, this girl was suffering. What did Mrs. Smith say to you? Asked Elinor. She was angry. I knew that Sophia Gray wanted to marry me, and I decided that I should accept her. Mrs. Smith was happy with that. I was going to have dinner with your family that evening, but in the morning I came to say that I must leave, he said. I was so afraid to see Marianne again. I remembered feeling so happy the day before, and now I had to tell her that I was leaving. It was painful for me when I saw her so unhappy. Elinor asked, Did you tell her that you would come back? I cannot remember. I probably told her what I wanted to believe, he replied. And then your dear mother came and was so kind to me. I was extremely unhappy to leave your family who I loved so dearly. Elinor felt sorry for him. Is that everything? She said. No, he replied, because then you both came to London and I received Marianne's letter. Every word was like a knife in my heart. So he's positioning himself as a victim, obviously. Remember that you are married now, said Elinor. Say only what you should say. Willoughby continued. From Marianne's letter, I knew that she still loved me as much as much as before. It made my feelings for her come back. But everything was arranged between me and Sophia. I did not reply to your sister's letter. I knew that I must avoid you. I saw you both and many times from far away, but you did not see me. I even went to Mrs. Jennings' house once, but none of you were there. I avoided the Middletons too, but then I met Sir John in the street and he invited me to a ball. I did not go. I got another message from Marianne. I wanted to reply, but I did not. I thought of her every moment of every day. But I had to pretend to love Sophia. And then I saw you both at the party, and Marianne looked so beautiful and called my name so sweetly. But Sophia saw everything and was deeply jealous. She made me leave. That was the last time I saw Marianne. Her face was as white as death. Obviously. What about your letter to her? Said Elinor. It was written by my hand, but the words were all Sophia's. She had opened Marianne's last letter to me, and was extremely jealous. She made me write that letter and return your sister's letters with the piece of her hair that she had given me. He said, You must think very badly of me now. I understand a little more, said Elinor, but you chose what you wanted to do. I have been so unhappy, he said. Last night I saw Sir John. He had avoided speaking to me, but this time he came and told me that Marianne had a fever and was dying. As soon as I could, I prepared my carriage and travelled here to see her. Elinor was silent, thinking that he had been selfish, that he had done everything for himself. But she also knew that he was suffering. She could forgive him a little. I must go now. I'm happy that Marianne is better, but I have lost her, and I can never be happy in my marriage. If I could be free again. He stopped. There is one thing that I am afraid of more than anything. What is that? Asked Elinor. I'm afraid of your sister marrying another man, he replied. Now, I must go. Goodbye. So he would like to have everyone. And as you can see, Mrs. Smith, when she heard about this young woman being left by Willoughby, she doesn't really care about this poor girl. She is just saying that she's just happy for him to marry Sophia Grey. And she doesn't really care about this poor girl. After he had left, Elinor sat thinking for a while. She hated Willoughby less now. She returned to see Marianne, but a very short time after this, she was called downstairs. Another carriage had arrived. She ran into the hall, and there was her mother, a look of great suffering on her face. Colonel Brandon was standing behind her. Where is Marianne? How is she? Her mother cried. The fever has gone, Elinor quickly told her mother. Both her and Colonel Brandon's faces relaxed immediately. They looked very grateful to hear this good news. Mrs. Dashwood was taken was taken to see Marianne, and both of them were full of happiness to be together again. Elinor was able to go to bed, leaving her mother with Marianne, but she found it hard to sleep, thinking of what Willoughby had told her. She thought of what Colonel Brandon had suffered because of him. The kindness of her heart still made her a little sorry for poor Willoughby. Marianne continued to get better with her mother by her side again. The first time that Mrs. Dashwood was alone with Elinor, she said, "I'm happy that Marianne is getting better, but I'm happy for other reasons too. Colonel Brandon told me that he loves her, and I think that he wasn't as unhappy as me about her illness. And he said that he has loved her since he first saw her. He will be a very good husband for her." "He has an excellent character," said Elinor. "He thinks that he does not have any hope, but although he is older and not very handsome, I think that he is a much better person to marry than Willoughby. I am sure that Marianne could love him. And at Delaford there may be a cottage that we can live in to be nearer to Marianne," said Mrs. Dashwood, her mind running to the future. Poor Elinor! It seemed that she might have to be close to Delaford and to Lucy and Edward. After a few days, Marianne asked to see Colonel Brandon to say that she was very grateful to him for bringing her mother to Cleveland. Elinor noticed that he looked sad seeing Marianne's thin, white face. She felt sure that it made him remember Eliza. He had told Elinor that she had a similar character, to Marianne, and it was likely that illness had made them look similar too. This is the end of chapter 11. No, 12. 12. Sorry, we already read both chapters. Wow. Okay, so here is the end of chapter 12, and it seems like Colonel Brandon and Willoughby have the same taste in women. So, although little Eliza was the daughter of Eliza, the woman that he was in love with, but yeah. So here it is. So we were a little bit worried about Marianne, but she got better. And well, Willoughby's revelation, well, his having Willoughby's side of the story is interesting, although we can clearly see that he is a victim, that he's positioned himself as a victim, and well, he's a little bit sorry about his behavior, but that doesn't, well, Elinor feels sad for him because she's such she's such a kind person, and she's so um she never thinks bad of people, so she manages to feel sorry for him still, although he didn't behave gentlemanly towards Marianne, her sister, but also towards this young woman, Eliza, that he got pregnant and left. I think she was pregnant, or he. No, can't remember if she was pregnant, if she got pregnant and he left. Was she pregnant? Anyway, never mind. I hope that you enjoyed this live session. Um, sorry about the little bit the missing part that um the kind of um my with my memory loss with all the events that happened in the story, especially with the last two chapters. But anyway, I hope you still enjoyed this live reading. Tell me more about how you feel about the characters and what do you feel about Willoughby's apology, and whether do you think that his actions are justified, really, and that we should feel sorry for him, like Elinor, or not. I'd love to hear your comments. Thank you again for watching this video, and also make sure that if you want to attend this the second live workshop this Saturday, then you just need to subscribe to the book club membership and join the community of book lovers at Ladies Book Club. Have a beautiful rest of the day. And happy Christmas, guys. And I will see you on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central European Time, live on Instagram, to read our last chapters. So we will read chapter 13 and 14, and this is going to be our final live reading session of Sense and Sensibility. So I wish you a very happy Christmas. Have a beautiful time with your loved ones and enjoy reading Jane Austen. And have a great time. See you on Thursday. Bye. Bye bye.